Sarah looked at their pilot, Roscoe Jones. He had on a vintage Earth Hawaiian shirt, vintage Earth aviator shades, and was now sporting a mohawk, none of which he'd had when he went into stasis. He'd been a civilian news pilot for Newsstream 8, the Yoko. It had been an obscure news stream that covered obscure news, and his fans couldn't get enough of it. They'd done well enough to require a newscopter, and the pilot that went along with it. From Gaia's files, he was eccentric. Roscoe Jones wasn't even his real name, just his chopper persona, and Gaia couldn't confirm his real name, only his Roscoe Jones alias, and the surname Henderson. And it went into stasis to avoid going to court over a traffic violation, where he drove past a cop while smoking a huge bowl. Corporal Mix, herself, and Roscoe were currently checking out their Cepeda transport. It was military, had all the bells and whistles, was capable of extra-atmospheric flight, and was fast enough to make it to the outer system and back before its life support failed. Which was good because Mimir's well was halfway out system inside the celestial dwarf on an elliptical orbit perpendicular to Terra Nova's orbit. Even so, they were packing extra rations and life support despite their abridged crew. A Selfinair normally held a crew of 4, a pilot, co-pilot, crew chief and weapons officer. She was filling in as crew chief and Corporal Mix was doing duty as the weapons officer, and FTR linked to Gaia, and she was coming along as co-pilot. An hour later the checks were done, and they were all seated in the cockpit. "Alright, darling," Roscoe told the craft. "Let's see what you can do now." The ship powered up, slowly lifted off the pad. "Alrighty, youngsters, hang on. I'm going to once around the city as a wee shakedown," he announced, as he goosed the throttle forward. He'd taken the Selfinair out on several suborbital flights already, each time coming back with some maintenance item or another. The Selfinair surged forward with no atmosphere to induce drag. There wasn't even a shudder. "Oh, baby, where have you been my whole life?" Roscoe asked. "Didn't you used to fly these things?" Mix asked. "Civilian downgrades. We didn't get these good-ass inertial dampeners," Roscoe reported, as he put the craft into a turn, orbiting the destroyed city. "Gaia, how's everything look?" Gaia's holographic form appeared in the co-pilot's seat. "Everything is in the green. Your unorthodox test flights have managed to break in components in a fraction of the time required by the manuals." Roscoe nodded. "I had to maintain my bird in the Orko. Learned a few shortcuts. We're clear for orbital insertion." Gaia's holographic form rippled. "We are." "Yeehaw!" Roscoe replied, as he put the nose to the sky and went max throttle. In very few seconds, they were clear of the non-existent atmosphere, and Roscoe put them in high orbit. "Alright, kiddies, we're going to make a few orbits while we check some things. Make sure we're good to go for the long burn to Mimir as well," he said, locking in the autopilot and locking his station down before standing and moving aft. "Gaia, you've got the helm. Keep us steady on, and notify me of any deviations." "Understood," she replied. Sarah began to run her own checks. Soon Roscoe would be at the aft engine access bay, and they would compare feelings. Likewise, Corporal Mix was running his own checks on the weapons, or would be comparing his readouts to Gaia's external scans. Some hours later, they were all once again seated. "Gaia, are we clear on the long burn?" Roscoe asked. "We are go for burn, course plotted and logged. We are good to burn on your mark." "Awesome!" Roscoe said. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Please ensure your tray tables are locked in the upright position, and don't forget to brace because I've dialed back the inertial dampeners a bit." "Wait, what?" Mick said, as Sarah's head snapped around. "Blast off!" Roscoe yelled, as he slammed the throttle forward. They should have felt a gentle push back into their crash seats. Instead, they received several G's worth of acceleration. Sarah could see Roscoe's grin in reflections from the canopy and several screens. "This is that good shit," he grunted over the exertion. It felt like several pounds of weight were sitting on her chest. "Fuck! It's been too long since I felt that," he said finally. "Dialing IDs back up," he announced after several minutes, and Sarah felt the weight lift from her chest. "That was not remotely funny," she scolded him. "But it was fucking fun," he replied, still grinning like a madman. She shook her head and checked her panels. On course, 3 hours until Gungnir Alpha platforms. 6 hours later, Sarah was in the control room of the Gungnir Alpha's primary platform. Mix and Roscoe were in the main armory and magazine respectively, Roscoe under Gaia's direct supervision. Mix pinged her on the implants. Sarah, it would take a full team weeks to go for all this, but we've confirmed what Gaia and the General asked us to confirm. I'm heading back to the Selfnir. She nodded and replied, I'm seeing green on the boards here too. She switched feeds to Roscoe. How's it coming? How the hell should I know? I'm a pilot, not ordnance tech. Gaia clicked onto the channel. You're doing fine. Just careful around the plasma reactor. It took Roscoe another 2 hours to complete his inspections. I never want to do that again, he grumbled. Sarah shook her head. We've got 5 more Gungnirs between here and Mimir's Well. Then we'll have to inspect the Mjolnir there as well. Roscoe let out a groan as he started his pre-flight check. 3 days in the Selfnir, broken up only by hours spent running quick diagnostic checks on Gungnir system defense platforms, were grueling. But now they were on final approach to Gaia's Mimir's Well. A celestial dwarf bigger than Pluto, she spent several hundred years hollowing out with automated mining equipment, then building Mjolnirs en masse. It had taken her centuries, but she'd built more warships inside the planetoid than humanity had ever had at its peak. With her instructions, they guided the Selfnir down a massive canyon, to a cave that concealed a tunnel wide enough for an old aircraft carrier to pass through. After passing no less than 12 armoured doors, each thicker than the Selfnir was long, they sat down on a landing pad, and Gaia began to lower the pad into the facility proper. I'm bringing the first unit online on shore power. Once you've verified the reactor status, we can switch over to internal power and begin a pre-flight checklist, Gaia informed them. First unit? Didn't you name any of them? Mix asked. I did not. I felt that it would fall to you, once you woke up to name them. The rest of the ride was quiet. Then they entered the hollow cavern beneath the planetoid's crust, and they could see some of the ships Gaia had built in the light cast off by the dock lighting on TNDF 000001. They were silent as they studied what would have been the effort of generations. The one ship they could see, and the thousands they could not in the darkness. I've got a name, Mix said. What's that? Sarah asked. The extended warranty.